Good day, everyone. Just waiting for this little video thing to get started. How are you? I feel like it's been forever, even though it actually has only been a week since last we met when I was in a hotel room in Las Vegas. I hope that this day finds you well. Uh, it is a gorgeous day here in Franklin, Tennessee, kind of in the high 80s, which is really actually quite beautiful. So, um, things are good. I had a good week in Las Vegas. I met up with some clients, which was really great. Like that's the first time that's happened at a station summit Promax for me. So it was a very productive week. So I hope that your week was equally productive. Um, and of course, as always, if you would be so kind as to check in, that would be really awesome. Of course, people just arrived outside my door, so I don't like working on the street. Let me check. Yeah, things are going on. It's a busy street. Please forgive me. I'm trying to sort of get used to a new camera angle. So if I am looking down, pardon me. I'm working on it. Today we are going to talk about finding work that aligns with your values. This is an interesting topic, and um, you know, it's this is such a personal topic. Like, so just know that. Like, I'll give you an example or two of sort of how I've come to think about this topic, but that's just me. It's just me and my trajectory through my career, and also the trajectory through my values. Right, like some things are constant, and some of the details change. Right, and so there's while I do find that my values are constant, there's fluidity in how they are expressed. So let's see. Let me see who's here. Hi, John. Hi, Adam. Hi, Larry. So nice that you're here. I really appreciate it. Um, okay, so first and foremost, um, I think the most obvious little piece of information here is how do you find work that aligns with your values? Well, the first thing is you have to know what you value. I know it sounds so simplistic, but it's true. And that's always why I'm kind of after this idea of knowing who you are, um, what you love, who you love, the things that matter to you, because then it becomes much clearer, the kinds of things that you're willing to do in your life, not just in your work, but in your life. So that's number one. And then the second piece, which I think is, again, fairly rudimentary, right? You have to you have to do some searching. You have to do some reconnaissance. If there are particular companies that you like, you check them out. You use the fabulous interwebs to find out what their particular core values are, and what their best practices are, and you go from there, right? And in terms of seeking out the work, I mean, that is kind of the same as it is for any company, right? Um, if you are a person who uses LinkedIn and you really do marketing on your own to find clients, that's what you're going to do. You're going to seek out clients that align with your values, and you're going to find out who they who their advertising um, agency is that they work with, and you're going to pursue in the same way that you normally would, right? So one of the finer details of this idea, however, is that I think that it's best to seek out what you support as opposed to seeking out or getting rid of what you don't support, what you don't like, values you don't like. And I say that because most corporations, particularly ones that have a lot of money to advertise, they are generally they are amoral companies. They're not, you know, businesses generally speaking are about profit and bottom line, and there's a lot about that that's good. I mean, the more a company makes, generally speaking, the more people they can hire, the more productive they can be, the more they can be of service to the people who buy their products, et cetera, et cetera. So, so that it gets complicated, right? Because it's really hard to find really pure corporate entities, that don't do anything that particular people might find unacceptable, unethical, immoral. That's it's difficult. And um, although I will say, compared to the 1990s, which is what the late 80s and early 90s, which is what I'm going to reference when I talk about my own stuff, there are so many more companies that are ethically centered, right? They, like, for example, the cosmetics industry has been rife with difficulty in the sense that they have done animal testing, right? And the vast majority of people that I know who care about animals don't want to use products that are tested. You know, I'm sorry, did I say that right? The vast majority of people I know care about whether or not a company tests on animals, and um, they don't wish to support a company that does. Well, here we are in 2022, and there are so many companies, really good companies, that uh, you know they behave ethically in that sense, right? So not just no testing on animals, but they're also using clean products, if you will, that aren't toxic to us, right? So there's a lot more choices these days than there was in the late 1980s and early 90s, when that was sort of rampant and all that stuff. So we do have a lot more choice in terms of companies, but I look at a company like Beautycounter, right, which it's becoming a much more popular um, entity, right, company from which to buy cosmetics and lotions and shampoo and all that kind of stuff. But they don't do advertising. They don't do radio and television advertising. Their advertising is mostly by way of social media. So it's not like we can tap into that and go, "Hey, I want to do your television advertising." It's like they don't do television advertising. So that's an interesting thing, and it tends to be the larger companies, Procter and Gamble, Johnson and Johnson, that are just, they own all kinds of different uh, household and personal care items, and they spend a lot of money on advertising. So those are the guys who are doing TV campaigns and radio campaigns and stuff like that. So when you start to look into those companies, it's like, which is a piece of my story. So I will get to that. So, um, in the late 80s and early 90s, I was a vegetarian, and I, for a period of time, was vegan. And I was a fairly active supporter of PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. And like I gave up wearing leather, in my shoes, purses, belts, all that, at a time when there weren't a lot of great alternatives. Right now, again, there's just so much good stuff out there, um, that if you don't want to wear leather, you can still look good. So, but this started me on this journey of like I was one of those people who like got boxed up all my stuff made by a Schick corporation, right? I boxed it all up with a letter and was like, "I don't want your products in my house." And I packed it all up and I sent it back to them, as a form of protest, right? And I think what I learned in all of that, it's a long story how I'm not a vegetarian anymore. Um, we don't need to talk about all the details of that, um, but what I learned there, it was like, here I am, a vegan, right? and I get auditions in from my agent at the time, and we you get a phone call like, hey, we have an audition for you. Great, what's it for? McDonald's. Great, McDonald's. That's a great, everybody wants a McDonald's campaign. Everybody wants a McDonald's campaign. So how does the vegan like make sense of that, right? So it's an interesting question, right? I gave up being a vegetarian, vegan, when I ran a marathon, and by the time in the training, by the time I hit the 18-mile mark in training, I had no energy. I had no stamina, none. I was like, I have to start eating meat. I mean, it's an interesting thing, right? So, anyway, I say this because it is not necessarily an easy thing to do if your intent is to have a career with high profile clients who they're the ones who advertise, spend money on advertising, do a lot of promoting, right? And where the work is prevalent. So it's an interesting it's an interesting thing to contemplate. Um, and I think what I learned was I could find something negative, something I didn't like about every single advertiser, every single corporation that did TV and radio advertising. If I was really looking at their practices, their best practices, I could find something that didn't align, right, with my core values. And so at a certain point you go, okay, so if I'm really going to be hard and fast, true to my moral center, I'm not going to work in advertising. I'm not going to be a voice actor. Right? Like, it gets down to that in a certain sense. So what I think we have to realize is that we are complex beings. And advertising is a complex industry. We're dealing with real practices of advertisers and image, right, of who these advertisers are, what these products are. And somewhere in there, we have to make peace, right, with the business that we have chosen. That is the truth. And so I think it's a good idea, again, to know who you are, know what your bottom lines are. There are certain things I won't do. I mean, and I'll give you an example of that with video games. Like, I have done enough violent video games to know I don't want to do them anymore. And I don't care how much money I might be offered. And I'm not going to ever be offered anything more than scale, but do you know what I'm saying? Just as a barometer, I don't want to do them anymore. I don't want to participate in that piece of the culture. I don't want to. Does that mean I think that other people, other, comrades of mine, other people in voiceover shouldn't? It's entirely up to them. Entirely. I got no judgment about anybody about what they choose to do or what they choose not to do. With regard to, politics and an election cycle, if you don't want to do if you don't want to do advertising for Democrats or Republicans, that is your prerogative, right? Absolutely. And then there are people who say, you know what, I lend my voice, so I'll do both, right? No problem there either, right? To me, right? But there are particular ways in which we can sort of live out our values and choose what it is that we're going to lend our voice to, and the more prominent a campaign, the more likely it is that your voice will be recognized, and all that good stuff, right? So, but the big lesson for me there was the whole McDonald's thing and being a vegetarian, a vegan for a while. It was like, how do I put that together? And that's when I realized that I couldn't put it together, and that I had to realize that I was going to have to live with some discomfort, right? um, in aligning my values, right? So let me see if you have any comments or questions in there. Hey, Yvonne. Um, oh my goodness, you're so sweet, Scott. Um, oh, Genevieve. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce your name. It's one of my favorite names. Um, how do you know beforehand what level of violence, for example, would be included in a new video game? Oh, thank you. I love these glasses. They're my favorite, some of my favorite glasses. I'm glad you like them. Um, Generally speaking, my experience is that uh, when my agent sends me uh, an audition for a video game, they have begun to include that information, like high level of violence, or or a lot of efforts. There's a lot of efforts, and generally that means there's fighting, and um, warfare and death and destruction, that kind of stuff. But you can always ask, what's the level of violence here? Like, what's the theme of the video game? That's a perfectly reasonable question to ask. Now, I knew the game that I worked on that was the deciding factor for me was The Last of Us 2, which was, and if you follow video games, The Last of Us was a huge, huge hit, like award winning, just a monstrous video game. And, I know people who watched, who played The Last of Us 2 and wrote to me and said, this game was really violent. I'm like, yeah, I know. And they said, but I have to tell you, the moral of the story was really excellent. Like it wasn't necessarily pro violence. It was violent, which was an important part of the storyline to communicate a particular viewpoint, to say that this kind of violence is not good, right? So to me, that was just like, that in essence didn't matter to me. I appreciated and was glad that The Last of Us 2 had, had it did actually have a strong, moral sensibility, about it. Um, but it was still, it was difficult. It was difficult. It was difficult vocally. It was like, it thrashed my voice. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I mean, there's that piece of the value as well. The how do I treat myself? Right? How do I take care of my voice? I'm not good at that kind of stuff. I'm not good at efforts. You know, I'm doing a game right now that has very few efforts, but the ones that I am doing are like, wow, it's like I'm not great at it. By the end of it, I'm in pretty rough shape. So I go, well, I don't want to do that either because I value my voice and the other work that I do. Um, so I know that's kind of a long answer. Uh, but honestly, you just ask, or you do some. It's hard to do research because we usually get code names, right? So we can't go look it up and say, well, what is this game about? And generally, that information you can't really ask for, but you can ask them to clarify you know, the level of violence in the game or what the theme is, right? There's certain themed stuff that I like. I just don't want to do that. I don't want to participate. Um, so again, there are many ways I think that we can live out our values. And then we also have to realize that if we're going to participate in voiceover, in commercial voiceover, it's never going to be perfect. You're going to work for clients that don't do everything the way that you wish they would. I think that's just how it is. And it feels a little, squishy for me to say that, but I just come back to the whole, being a vegan for 5 years and being super excited about auditioning for McDonald's. It's like, how did I put that together? Um, I guess I saw it as like advertising. Like I'm participating in advertising. They're a great advertiser. They're great spots. They're great for your, for your reel, that kind of stuff. And so it was almost like I compartmentalized certain things about my life and my values. Oops, where did you go? Oh, you're still here. Um, Sorry, my screen just disappeared. Um, so I think there's a bit of that going on. And again, I think each of us has to decide for ourselves to what degree we're going to compartmentalize our values. Um, and I guess ultimately the lesson for me was that I just know um, there are certain hard and fast lines that I won't, cross over. Um, but but others I am willing to be more fluid, you know. So let me just see if there are any other questions or comments about this. Hi, Joanne. Hi, Howie. Scott and Yvonne. Yeah. Oh, hi, Chris. I see you there. Fantastic. Any questions that you might have for me about this? I'm trying to think if I hit everything. Um, I will say this, as I think is evidenced in the example I gave you about being a vegan for a while. Um, I was in my 20s, and I think that again, even though I look back on my life, I know that there was a through line that has remained constant. But again, there are ways in which my life has changed and my perspective has changed. And I have, as you get older, if you're not incorporating new stuff into your life and considering new points of view, it's like, don't get stuck. These are the opportunities that we have for growth, and these are the opportunities that we have for understanding that people are different than we are, that good people of good character um, have different points of view, and we, you know, by being willing to open ourselves up to new and different information, we actually kind of open our hearts and ourselves to different people, right? Which ultimately makes us more compassionate. How I can turn, a, a voiceover Facebook Live into a story about compassion, I'm not sure, but I think it's in there. I do. I mean, and that's why I think a piece of growing up, right, is learning to live with a bit of dissonance in our lives. Like things don't always line up terribly neatly, do they? They don't. So I think the more we can learn to kind of take that in, the better off our lives will be, the fuller and richer our voiceover careers will be, all of that. So let's see. Any more? Oh, Joanne. Oh, oops. Evan, okay. If, as voice actors, we need to be fluid with the work we take on with imperfect advertisers as the nature of our industry, are there any risks of backlash from other people who may not share or tolerate that same approach to fluidity that could negatively impact our careers? Wow, Evan, that's such a great question. And uh, that's entirely possible in this day and age. It's hard. There's a sense, I think we see it now. We're kind of intolerant of one another, and we become intransigent in our viewpoints. It's also a piece of why I am not a big fan, and you all know this of me, but I'm not a big fan of posting your work. I feel like, you know, there are other means by which we can, you know, make ourselves known to people who can hire us, right? So I think you have to, in my opinion is, it's wise to be judicious about um, how you display yourself in the world. I will say this, if you can't be straightforward and honest about who you are and what you value and all of that with your agents, that that's a problem, right? That to me is where the relationship matters. Um, my agents know the things I will and won't do, and they live with that, right? They get that, and so that's a really important piece of my relationship with them. It doesn't mean we agree on everything, but they are respectful, and I am to them as well, right? Like, so I think I think yeah. I mean, I think that if we step out and we really are making a statement about who we're working for and what we're doing, of course we open ourselves up. I think we do so less because we're voice actors, where our faces are not attached. So, but I will say that I think it's probably a very, very, very small percentage of people who would, uh, who would sort of shun another for the work that they undertake, right? And I think about this with politics, right? Which is why I think it's interesting to. I'm always fascinated when people do um, both party uh, work. Like I kind of go, okay, that's great. Like they're saying I'm a voice actor and I will do the work and I will do the best work no matter which side it is. I used to do political work, again in the early 2000s, late 90s, and I never knew what side they were affiliated with because it was all propositions, in and most of them were in Missouri, right? So I never knew like what I was doing, but I think wherever we decide that we are going to take a particular stand, um, it's inevitable that it's going to irritate somebody. But I don't think we ought to live our lives afraid of the choices that we make, right? Um, so I hope that is. I know people. Um, what do I want to say? Because in a certain sense, like what I'm talking about now, and the things that might negatively impact a career, I think that really has to do with politics, right? But I don't think that if you say, you know what, I'm not going, here I am again with that. I'm a vegan and I'm not going to do work for McDonald's. I don't think anybody's going to go, uh, wow, like you're really cutting yourself off from a good, port. That's really stupid. Or I am a vegan and I'm going to do work for McDonald's. Wow, you're not really true to your values. You kind of go, yeah, I'm a voice actor and I'm I'm doing my work. I'm doing what I'm paid to do, Um, so I think it really has to do like the sort of fear of negative impact, I think really has to do with the craziness of politics right now. And those things, honest to God, I sit on the sidelines. I got nothing to say about it because I have friends and colleagues on both sides and everywhere in between. So I'm just like, I'm here to try to teach people how to be compassionate and do good work and all of that. But I do think that wherever we decide that we're going to take some stand, there will always be blowback. But um, I don't think that those are the types of things that negatively impact a career, if you will. Does it negatively impact me to say that I'm not going to do video games that contain a lot of violence? It certainly affects my work, right? Like I do a lot fewer video games than I used to, but that's okay. I live with that, right? Because I've drawn the line. I don't want to. So I'm sure my agents, if all they're looking at is the bottom line, I think they would say to me like, "Wow, I wish you would read for these things," because it's a genre of voiceover that I do well in. So it's like I'm taking myself out of a whole category of video games. So I'm sure they wish that I wouldn't do that. but I'm like, I can't do it, you know. And they're like, and they're fine. They're like, all right, we'll send you the other stuff, you know. So I know that was a little mushy, um, but I hope that it's helpful. I think what's important is to, you know, do the stuff um, that allows you to sleep at night. You know, that's really the bottom line. So I've kept you for so long. Here I thought, oh, I don't have a lot to say about this stuff. But I guess I do. Feel like I have a lot to say about everything. All right. Well, I'm going to let you go Um, as always, if you have questions, if you have other comments, you know, add them to the comments section. Send me a direct message. And for those of you again who are watching it on the replay, like feel free to comment again because I go through it and I read stuff. So there you go. So the two bottom lines: know who you are, know what matters to you, know what you value, and then seek out things on the positive side. Right? That's what I would say. Instead of saying, I'm not going to work for these people, because, right, I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't like that, because I don't like that yourself to death, right? There's just so much to not like out in the world. So find what you do like, and do some reconnaissance, and like you would in any particular job that you are seeking to do. So thank you. And I will see you next week. I don't know what the topic is, but I'm sure it'll be fun. Have a great week, and I'll see you on the socials. I don't think I've ever said that before, but I'll be there. All right. Take care. Have a good one.